Who is raising prices due to tariffs? Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. Yesterday I discussed inflation and how the US is not really seeing a lot of inflation because price increases for most of the things we buy are not really happening. The expected price increases have not materialized. And I had a whole list, if you look at yesterday's video, of products that we all buy frequently that are dropping in prices. You know, things like rent, gasoline, home prices are dropping, food items that are dropping in price, a long list of things that are actually dropping in price in the economy. But to tell the whole story, I thought I would discuss the parts of the economy where prices are increasing. Who is raising prices due to tariffs? So the bottom line is, if any company based in the US is doing business with China, they are trying, at least with some of their product line, to increase prices. This is a mostly China story. I just want to set that expectation at the beginning. So here's some background. Companies raise prices to protect their profit margin. A tariff is an additional cost, okay? So if a tariff is imposed of 145%, consumers will not pay that big of a price increase. Think of it this way. A 100% price increase doubles the price. So for example, if you pulled up to the gas pump and the price of a gallon was $3, okay, which that actually happens to be in some parts of the country, a 100% price increase on gas, it would no longer be $3 a gallon, it would be $6 a gallon, a doubling of the price, okay? A 145% increase would push it into the sevens per gallon, okay? It's a huge increase. So if you were driving and you pulled up to the gas pump and you saw gas prices were between $7.50 and $8, you would cut down on your driving significantly because it's a huge increase in your costs, right? So China is in trouble for this reason. They know they cannot pass those huge price increases on. Now, the 145% is on hold. I believe the current tariff is about 30%. It's higher on some products from China, but this is how much China sells to the US. This is before Liberation Day, April 2nd of this year. Okay, annually, China sells $525 billion worth of products. So if you're doing business with China and China is trying to pass on tariffs, you are raising prices due to those tariffs if you're a US-based company, or at least you're trying to. Not with everything and not the full amount, but you're trying to cut your losses. You're trying to protect your profit margin. So China sells $525 billion to the US in the US market. The US only sells $143 billion into China, much less, okay? So China is in deep trouble because there's such a huge trade imbalance with the US. They are vulnerable. They have a lot to lose. So the United States can impose this tariff on China because of that trade imbalance. They're vulnerable. The US is saying, you guys are not buying enough US-made goods. We have a huge trade imbalance. We're not going to do this any longer. So the 145% tariff at some point will go into effect across the board on all Chinese products. So I want to give you an example, a numerical example of what a 145% tariff does to a price of something. Let's assume there's a $15 product sold in Target, at a Target store, from China. It's a $15 product. Let's assume that the cost of goods sold, the cost to make that product was $10. Made for $10, sells in Target for $15 before the tariffs were imposed. Okay, now after the tariffs go into effect, the 145% tariff, that $15 price is gone. In order to keep the same profit margin, the $15 would have to increase to $42.23. Now, I'm not going to go through all the math, at least not during the video, but it's actually, the math is on the screen to the left here. I'm showing you from the notes, the actual math, if you're interested in that. But a $15 product that someone's used to buying, okay, no big deal. If they suddenly see a near tripling of the price because the company wants to retain their profit margin, they're not going to buy that item. So China's in deep trouble. They can't pass on 145% price increase. Target cannot either. It's not happening. So who is raising prices due to tariffs? Let's talk about that, because China is being, they've had tariffs imposed on them. They're importing products that are facing tariffs, 30% right now, higher on some items. Okay, so this is a list of US companies that are trying to raise prices. I will explain why this is a bad thing. Besides this example here, I'm going to explain why this is not going to work, why these US companies are going to suffer if they keep doing this. Munchkin, Hasbro, Macy's, Best Buy, Target, Costco, and especially Amazon. Amazon sells a lot of Chinese products. A lot of them are knockoffs of U.S. goods. For example, I play guitar and I've got a music hobby. So you can buy guitars that look like Gibson guitars, like Les Pauls and stuff, for a couple $100, $300. And they normally cost up to $2,000 if they're the real thing. So Amazon is particularly bad at supporting China. So for not much longer, Amazon is trying to raise prices to pass on these tariffs. People are not going to have it. It's not happening. These companies that are trying to push on price increases, the reason they're doing that is because they are sourcing their products from China. And the whole point is they wouldn't have to increase their prices if they sold goods made in the US. If Amazon was restricted to selling US made products instead of these knockoffs, I'm sure that includes knockoffs like watches, high-end watches, and high-end products. China makes copies and dumps them into the U.S. market using Amazon. Amazon is sort of a fence in this regard. If U.S. companies would stop sourcing their products and get products from the U.S., there would be no tariffs, and there would be no price increases to pass on. 145% tariff increase. It's going to wipe China out. So here are a couple of large Chinese companies you've probably heard about that are raising prices because of the tariffs. Shine and Temu. You've probably heard of those two. If you haven't, look those up online. They're pretty well known to U.S. companies or to U.S. consumers. So the good news is some companies in the U.S. are not raising prices due to tariffs. Lululemon, Adobe, Home Depot, Walmart, General Mills, Kraft Heinz, Medtronic, Geico, Coca-Cola, and a bunch of other ones. So the hot setup for U.S. companies is to stop getting products from China because you're not going to be able to pass price increases on. If these companies keep passing higher prices on to the consumers, people will stop shopping at those stores. They're not going to pay such high prices. Like I said, the $15 product, in order to pass the whole tariff to the consumer, the $15 product price would have to become $42.23. So some U.S. companies are not raising prices. If you do a lot of shopping, you have probably learned what sort of products to avoid and which retailers to avoid. Walmart is particularly careful about this issue because previously, before April 2nd of this year, the Liberation Day, Walmart sourced a lot of their products from China. And they're being very cautious about not destroying their brand. Because if you think about it, one of Walmart's selling strengths is it's well known for affordable prices, right? So they're not in a position, their brand, they're not in a position to be able to start doubling prices or raising prices to a large degree. So they're going to have to start sourcing from places other than China. Because China, they're not going to be able to pass on 145% tariff. Again, if you're used to paying $3 a gallon for gas, and then one day you show up at the gas pump and it's $7.50 a gallon, you're really going to curtail your driving. You're not going to put up with that. So the takeaway, to avoid having to raise prices due to tariffs, these U.S. companies that are raising prices because of the tariffs, to avoid getting stuck like that, start sourcing from U.S.-based suppliers because there are no tariffs to pass on. If you're buying products made in the USA, and stop sourcing products from China, because the negative profit margin, if companies raise prices to this extent, they're going to lose sales and their profits will basically vanish. So these companies are going to have to stop sourcing products from China, and that way they will sort of protect their market share. And it's a really tough situation for a lot of companies. But if you look at the video that I posted yesterday about inflation, there's a long list of companies that are doing a great job either not raising prices or actually lowering prices. The auto manufacturers, surprisingly, probably because they're manufacturing cars inside the U.S. It was Nissan, Toyota, Honda, not raising prices. They're actually keeping prices the same or lowering prices. Ford is a car company that's passing on employee discounts for everyone. They make their cars in the U.S. So that's really the hot setup, is to source your products that you sell from U.S. Companies. And so you won't get hit with the tariffs. So who is raising prices due to tariffs? Anyone who does business with China. This is becoming a bigger and bigger problem because the U.S. is no longer going to tolerate this huge trade imbalance, and the U.S. is putting a stop to it using these tariffs. And it's at least in my opinion, I think it's justified because we're giving them a lot more money than they're giving us. Eventually, we will go broke doing that. If you have any questions about this, please post questions in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. I know this is a tough issue. If you are, for example, if you're selling on Amazon and you've been buying from Chinese manufacturers, I'm sorry this is affecting you guys. But on the other hand, the jobs in the United States, we need jobs, especially with artificial intelligence sort of taking a bludgeon to the workforce. The higher paying jobs in the U.S. that are being eliminated by artificial intelligence, that has a big impact on the economy because they were high paying jobs. So we need to create jobs in the U.S. and this is one way to do it, to give an incentive for companies to buy products from U.S. From companies that produce their products in the U.S. instead of China. That will create jobs in the U.S. So post any questions you have in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I really want to thank everyone for watching and have a great day.